Do you want to know how to make super catchy pop beats for artists like Harry Styles, Rex Orange County, Post Malone, and Dominic Fike? This is a perfect video for you. In this video, I'll break down all the things you need to know to replicate their style and make beats just like these artists. So without further ado, here's a little sample of the beat, and then I'll show you guys how to do it yourself. Let's get it. Step 1. Chords. For these types of songs, the type of instruments you want to be using are realistic sounding. So like pianos, strings, bells, guitars, and maybe sometimes some mellow synths. So just pick one of these instruments to make the initial chord progression on. Here I'm using a contact piano. Alright, so to make chords, oftentimes I'll just play around with notes in the piano roll until I find something I like. For these types of songs, using a lot of sevenths chords really help to make a dreamy pop-ish sound. These are just basic 3-note chords with just one more note added on top. You can really use either major or minor for these types of songs, but for this one specifically, I started in major. After I messed around for a bit, I laid these chords down on the piano. Once I had that piano down, I just copied the exact same notes onto another piano. Step 2. Melodies. Okay, so once you've got your chords, this is usually the part where I add the melody. There's a few different methods you could do. So you can try playing the chords and then just humming a melody along and then just clicking that melody in that you hummed. Or you can just mess around clicking in different notes till you create a melody that you like the sound of, kind of like what we did with the chords. Also, if you can play an instrument like the keyboard or guitar, then just grab one of those and play around with it. For this specific song, I just started on this guitar here and just messed around playing a few different things till I found something I like the sound of. I usually just play notes until I find the kind of notes in the key, and then I'll just mess around playing those notes in different combinations. This is the guitar melody I ended up laying down for this beat. So once I played this guitar in, I just layered it with a glockenspiel by just clicking in the same melody I played on the guitar by ear. Layering these two instruments is a super cool trick and gives you a really cool timbre and like texture. The final melodic instrument in this beat are just these contact strings. As you can see, these strings I just clicked in this extremely simple melody, just 4 notes held out. Strings are the goated thing to add to these type of beats because they add that needed high end and they just thicken out the beat. Alrighty, now that we've got some chords and a melody, this is the part where I like to add a bass. For this genre, generally you're going to want to use bass guitar or a retro sounding bass. For this beat, I played in a bass guitar, but there are plenty of really good sounding bass guitar plugins. For example, Scarby Rickenbacker bass from Native Instruments. It's good to keep the bass fairly simple, but make sure you put some slides in because they always sound good. Step 4. Drums. This is probably my favorite part of making these beats. Once you have some really good slapping drums, your track will really come to life. Alright, so in terms of which drums to use, I've scoured the internet looking for some good sounding drum samples to make this kind of genre, but it's fairly hard to find high quality samples that will make your track slap. So I ended up just kind of making my own drum kit. So yeah, all of the drum sounds from this beat are straight from my indie pop drum kit, Escape. It's a kit with heaps of really nice sounding indie drums that I use on every beat I make in this style. So yeah, if you're interested, I'll put a link to the kit in the description. It's only $5. I wanted to keep it cheap for you guys. So thanks heaps to anyone who purchases it. I usually start with the snare because it gives you a good sense of the rhythm and timing of the beat. You can either put a fast snare like I have here, hitting on the 2nd and 4th beat, or you can go for a more chill snare pattern and put it on the 3rd beat. After I add the snare, I like to go to the hi-hat. For this beat, I combined a hi-hat loop from my drum kit with the standard 2-step hi-hat. Next thing I put into this beat was a kick. I like to keep my kick fairly simple so it doesn't make the beat too hectic. Then I added the rides. In my opinion, these are essential for these type of beats. Literally just put them on every 8th step and your beat instantly sounds way better. Next, we've got the open hats and the toms just to add a little bit of flavor to the beat. Alright, so if you complete all these steps correctly, you should have some drums sounding a bit like this. Step 5. Mixing and mastering. Mixing is a really complicated thing and it can really make or break the beat. A really good tip here is just to make sure you're using high quality sounds in the first place, because then you don't have to do much mixing. You can only get a bad sound sounding so good, so that's why you should just use high quality sounds in the first place. Do this by using nice VSTs. Make sure you play and record any instrument you use very well, and finally make sure you use high quality drum samples. If you've done all these things, you should be able to get the mix sounding pretty good. Okay, so I don't have time for a full mixing tutorial, but here's a really quick little rundown. Some good guitar amps for this genre are Guitar Rig and Corey Wong. For bass, I normally always use CLA bass. For reverb, Valhalla Vintage Verb is super nice, but stock reverbs should work fine. Alright, so in terms of actually mixing, just use EQs to carve out clashing frequencies. For example, you should take the low frequencies out all the instruments that aren't the bass, just to give the bass its own room and so that the frequencies aren't clashing there. Next, make sure you're compressing things that the volume's really all over the place for. OTT is pretty godly for a quick fix if you just mess around with the depth knob. Another good simple compressor is Arvox. You legit just pull this knob down. A really good plugin for when you're recording anything is NS1. I've said it before, but it just takes out any noise. For example, like guitar noise, just completely gets rid of that. And then for a quick mastering guide, I just EQ anything that sounds a bit too harsh, and then I'll just chuck a limiter on it and make sure that bad boy's loud. But yeah, this is a really quick and simple explanation, and honestly could be in a whole video by itself. So if you guys would be keen on that, just let me know. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned a thing or two. And if you enjoyed, please subscribe. It really helps me out. Without further ado, here's the final beat.